that being said, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Jensen. Dr. Jensen's our Cancer Center Director, and we are super thrilled he's here today to kind of talk about KU Cancer Center and the importance of having patient research advocates at the Cancer Center. So, Dr. Jensen, it's your
Well, thanks. Sarah, can you guys hear me pretty well?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so you know, this is a very interesting topic because it's a phenomena that I think for the most part has happened within most of our lifetimes. I'm probably a little bit older than the rest of the group. It certainly happened within my lifetime because, you know, back in the 1960s, as I should say as late as the 1960s, cancer was a topic that wasn't even discussed in polite conversations. It was a diagnosis that once you had it, you largely hid it from your neighbors and friends, maybe some tight-knit folks in your family you could discuss it with, but even then, in some families, it wasn't even discussed. And so we have witnessed a dramatic change in the evolution of that conversation. And, you know, I've been involved in a number of meetings in the past month that have discussed the 50th anniversary of the passage of the National Cancer Act. And in my mind, kind of the beginning of changing you know, whether or not we could even talk about cancer began with the lobbying effort to pass the National Cancer Act. And Mary Lasker and a number of other key patient advocates were absolutely critical to beginning the conversation around moving this forward. And of course, the National Cancer Act was not passed until the end of 1971, 2 days before Christmas, signed by Richard Nixon. And for a whole host of reasons that we don't have time to get into tonight.
Dr. Jensen, we just lost your sound, I believe.
Oh, no.
No, Hope, I think it's just you.
It was just me because I heard it as soon as he said, oh, no. So maybe it was just me.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I can hear him well.
Okay, sorry about that.
So, you know, that really kind of set the stage for changing the conversation. I'd say that the next major thing that happened that really began to kind of put patient advocacy at the forefront was when Betty Ford and Happy Rockefeller, who at the time were the First Lady and Second Lady of the United States, were both diagnosed with breast cancer. And Betty Ford in particular was very public about her diagnosis. She talked about it in many national forums. And this was frankly a bit of a shock to the system at the time. They didn't know how to deal with her decision to do this. And I think it was probably the single biggest dramatic change in our being able to have conversations like this and being able to put together you know, groups of patients that could have these types of conversations. And so that was huge. And you know, when you're the first person to pioneer something like that, obviously that took enormous courage on her part. I would say that the next step in that process was, you know, Betty Ford making that decision was the stimulus for the rise of a number of patient advocacy groups, in particular the Susan G. Komen Foundation and the breast cancer action group that was led by Fran Vesco. And, you know, some people, you sort of jokingly refer to that as the Republican breast cancer women and the Democratic breast cancer women. And they certainly had different approaches to advocacy. But I think both were critically important for beginning to socialize the conversation of cancer across many fronts. Fran Vesco's group played a critically important role in some of the activities that Pivot plays by pioneering the idea that patient advocates and their supporters should be directly involved in the evaluation and the conversation around what is the research portfolio at cancer centers and among breast cancer researchers. And this was an absolutely radical idea at the time, and was certainly a shock to the system. And how this came about was there were a number of breast cancer advocates led by Fran Vesco who were trying to increase the budget for breast cancer research. And they were meeting all kinds of resistance to doing that. And Tom Harkin and a number of other high-ranking legislators in the United States Congress figured out that one way they could get around and bypass some of the opposition that they were getting was to stick the breast cancer research program into the Department of Defense budget. And that's what happened in the 1980s and early 90s, when all of a sudden the Department of Defense became responsible for a program focused on breast cancer research. That subsequently expanded to a number of other sites, and that program continues today. And one of the distinguishing features of that program is the idea that every single study section that evaluates grants that come into the DoD needs to have a lay reviewer, a patient advocate reviewer, who addresses the concerns of the breast cancer community on the impact of that research on breast cancer patients, and that indeed this was an absolutely critical aspect of evaluating these proposals. And that idea became firmly implanted in the DoD research program, and now is really accepted as, well, of course, that's how it ought to be. But I can guarantee you there was a great deal of pushback to that idea when it first began. Now, the NIH has been a little bit slower in terms of embracing that idea. There are certain study sections, like for instance, the Cancer Center Grants Study Section, Subcommittee A, where there are patient advocates that are a regular part of that review. And in fact, when we have our site visit coming up February 15th, there will be patient advocates, at least one patient advocate, who will be part of that virtual review. And they bring a great deal to the evaluation of these proposals. And there are permanent members on Subcommittee A of patient advocates. And so that has been great. Now, for most other NIH study sections, that is not true. So that's a little bit, disappointing. But at least they're present on critical study sections like cancer center evaluations, like SPORE evaluations, where there is, clear, those reviewers are having a clear impact on directing the science. Now, the PIVOT program that all of you are part of or considering being part of was started several years ago by a number of folks, both faculty, staff, and patient advocates in the community. And all three of those entities played key roles in really envisioning what this program should look like, and clearly delineating what we were asking PIVOT to do, which is to understand and play a major role in influencing the research portfolio of the KU Cancer Center. And I'm very happy that the NCI has agreed with this approach, and in fact, the community outreach and engagement component of the P30 application really reflects this idea that cancer centers should be reaching out to their communities and their catchment areas to understand what the concerns are of cancer patients and their advocates, and to begin to not only understand what those concerns are, but to tailor their research programs to meet those needs and to address those needs in the community. And so that has become a key part of the evaluation of cancer centers. I'm really glad that we were way ahead of the guidelines on this idea. So we were patient advocacy cool before before it was cool, and I think that reflects the fact that we have tried to be very proactive in serving our catchment area. We actually didn't call it that at the time when the idea for the MCA was started, but in essence, that's what we were trying to do. And PIVOT has obviously become an incredibly important mechanism for us because we have such a large number of advocates that are involved, and we have much to learn from you in terms of being able to craft and tailor our research portfolio to meet your needs. So we're delighted to have you on board. You play a critical role in helping us decide what we're going to do as a cancer center. And, we've started instituting PIVOT reviews for our pilot projects, and we're going to be selecting those based in part on those PIVOT reviews this next week, and that's a fantastic development and really a recognition that you are having an influence, you are having a voice, and we're excited to put our money where our mouth is, essentially. So with that, I will I'd be delighted to ask or answer any questions that you might have, and hopefully this will serve as kind of a preamble for Cheryl's talk, which will be coming up next, and I'm sure will be much more informative and well crafted than anything I could offer up. So be delighted to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Trish, do we have any questions in the chat for Dr. Jensen?
We don't.
Okay, Angela, I do see your hand. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I was interested, so you, thank you for the historical perspective, because I had not done any research on the beginnings of patient advocacy. But I was really interested. I know in a lot of movements within our society, we know that they have been led by white women, which the two women that you mentioned are. Are there, can you speak to any inclusive activities or engagements for women of color in the early stages of breast cancer, of research and advocacy?
So, you know, certainly our Pivot program has been very intentional about making sure that we are inclusive. You know, you don't have to look any farther than Juntos or, you know, some of our other efforts with the African American community, the Native American community, to show that, you know, we not only talk the talk, we walk the walk. And you know, one of the things that I've been known to say in terms of talking about this issue is we cannot design a cancer center that's tailored to the needs of Johnson County soccer moms. Because if that's, you know, if that's our bar to get over, then, you know, that's, you know, we're not addressing the needs of the broader community. And we're also certainly not recognizing the fact that cancer is increasingly becoming a disease of disparities. And specifically, you know, socially determinants of health, many different, you know, social issues have dramatic impacts, not only on cancer incidence, but outcomes once cancer is diagnosed. And so, you know, if all of our marketing, if all of our outreach efforts are not specifically tailored to individual communities, then we're going to fail those communities. And I'm really proud to say that we have recognized this for a very long period of time. And you don't have to look any farther than our cancer prevention and control program, which you know, is quite well known for their tobacco cessation efforts. And one of the keys to their success is they didn't design one program and say, okay, we've solved the problem. This is it. Everybody needs to you know, look at this material and we're good to go. They recognize that each and every community must be specific. You know, we must have a specific conversation with each and every community. And that's why we have folks in population health that specifically work with the African American community. And in fact, that's our oldest group of researchers, our longest standing group of researchers. Do they achieved some success with the African American community, then we said, okay, I think we understand how to do this. Now we need to take our message and adapt it to Native Americans and adapt it to the various groups of Hispanics. And now we have to adapt it to rural Americans, because all of those different groups have special circumstances that we have to recognize if we're going to tailor a message that's effective and reaches the intended audience. So if we want to be serious about impacting incidence and mortality, we have to understand the audience that we're attempting to communicate with. And you know, that's a big part of why we have Pivot is you need to be able to tell us if we're not communicating the right message, and if we're not talking with the right people, and we're being culturally blind to something that would significantly impact and influence our ability to reach all these different communities. So I hope that's a partial answer to your really good question.
Well, thank you, because that was insightful, and it very it showed the intentionality of what Pivot and KU Cancer Center is trying to do for all populations. So that was, thank you for sharing. Awesome.
Can I jump in as well, just to share on the national level? Cheryl typed in sisters, and I think that one is focused, Sisters Network, I think tends to be focused on breast cancer, as well as Zero is a group focused on prostate cancer. So those are a couple of groups that are really focused in on Black health. I think you also see it sometimes in the different groups, like the AKA spend time in advocacy and cancer, and I know locally we have some of our advocates here as well. Sisters Beyond the Ribbon by Kim Jones is here, which is an advocacy group too, as well as Consuelo Ross has Surviving Beyond the Odds. So there's a few different groups like that locally. And then of course, I know Dr. Jensen was thinking about Crystal Lumpkins and all the work she does with Faith Works and the churches with her Faith Works Consortium. So I think though, one of the things I got from that, Angela, and this is where I think advocates are so key and important, is like, oh, have we really looked at Zero or Sisters and their approach to training advocates, et cetera? And your question made me want to go back and look at what they are doing and what we can learn from those groups as well, the national group. So thank you too for asking that.
And if I can add, not just about not just about who they are and where they are, but how we're supporting them. How we're supporting groups that are being led by African American women with breast cancer, and not only how we are supporting them, or just naming them, but how we're supporting them by our participation. So if Susan Coleman does something, everybody's all involved. But when Consuelo Ross does something with Surviving Beyond the Odds, when Kim does something with Sisters Beyond the Ribbon, I know we support Kim and what she's done. But again, the point here that I want to amplify is, again, it's easy to support Coleman. How comfortable are we supporting other things being led by African American women?
Oh, Dr. Jensen, you're muted.
Well, so yeah, I think you make a great point, Broderick, and I was really happy to participate in the 5K walk. I won't say 5K run, because I think it was the first 5K event I ever participated in where nobody ran. But
you and I together there, bro. We're gonna be.
Was two weekends ago, 1 weekend ago. Time gets away from me. But we were out in Swope Park, and it was a great event, and I think we had probably well over 100 people out there, and all kinds of vendors, and we were in the bandstand, and it was a lot of fun. And the fun part for me was all the conversations I got to have with folks before we even started walking, and it was truly a great event. I don't know if Kim's with us this evening or not, but she should be very proud of it.
Hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Jensen. Yes, we had a great time.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Any last questions for Dr. Jensen? If not, Cheryl, are you ready to go ahead and bring up your slides?
Good evening, and I'm so excited about your potential interest in starting or even advancing your patient research advocacy journey. Our goal in Pivot is to help make your experience and journey as inspiring and exciting as you want it to be. You can choose to be involved as much as you want or as little as you want. It's whatever you feel you have the interest, time, and passion for. Tonight, whoops, wrong one. Tonight, we'll be covering patients' perspectives and stories and why they are important in research, what patient research advocacy is. Well, darn it, my finger's going too fast. What patient research advocacy is, who patient research advocates are, what Pivot is, and Pivot's resources that are available to you now. So my journey began over 25 years ago when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. But when I was diagnosed, like you, it wasn't a journey I chose, it chose me. But when I did get diagnosed, I saw it as a wake-up call. And that was a call to do everything I could to be sure that cancer wouldn't come back, while at the same time maximizing my body's ability to heal itself. Today, that wake-up call has evolved into a passionate calling. Unfortunately, my journey didn't stop with me. And 17 years ago, my husband, Jeff, who's pictured here with me, was diagnosed with a very aggressive prostate cancer. We caught it early, we thought, and we had no evidence of disease after the initial treatments, but then within 2 years, he was faced with metastatic prostate cancer. It had metastasized to his bones. And while he was battling mets, then he was diagnosed with HPV tonsil cancer, and the treatment for that one really sucks. But despite the lifelong debilitating side effects that are caused from radiation treatments, he remained HPV tonsil cancer free for the rest of his life, which at that time was only 6 years more. In January 2018, the metastatic prostate cancer finally took Jeff's body, but his spirit remains with those of us who love him. Back in 2004, when Jeff was diagnosed and I was doing my research, the information that was online basically said he would be dead in months, 9 months to be exact. But thanks to research and just-in-time discoveries, we were blessed with 12 years of him surviving with metastatic prostate cancer. Jeff is my why, and why I'm so passionately involved in patient research advocacy. And the way too many friends and family who have been diagnosed and taken by cancer are also my why. They inspire me and fuel my dedication and work in research advocacy. And all of us have stories that we can share and help, and insights that we can share and help researchers learn more about what's important to patients. Advocacy comes in many forms, and I'm sure you've been involved in one or more of these, maybe all of them. Support. As a cancer survivor, our first encounter with advocacy is often during our own diagnosis and treatment. And similarly, as our journey evolves and moves forward, we begin supporting others as they begin to try to navigate their cancer journey. Then we have outreach, which is conducting public initiatives for screening, clinical trials, or cancer advocacy organizations. We have education, or bringing awareness and information to others about cancer, its prevention, clinical trials, and more. We have engaging public policy discussions with federal, state, and local decision makers. This includes supporting funding for government-funded programs and research, raising funds for organizations funding research and other initiatives to put an end to cancer. And then some of us chose to become involved who become knowledgeable about science and research and clinical trials and become engaged with researchers in the research process. And this is called research advocacy. And tonight our focus is on research advocacy. Many of us are involved in these other types of advocacy, and they fuel what we know and what we're able to give in terms of research. But what we're talking about tonight is research advocacy. I've been a research advocate for about 20 years now. And just as a reminder, as you get started, it's a journey, not a destination. And it's a continually evolving and inspiring one, often, sometimes a very surprising one. All you have to do is just take one step at a time in whatever direction you choose. There's no missteps, there's no wrong steps, it's your journey. Patient research advocacy is an emerging field, as Dr. Jensen has said in his comments, or at least inferred. So like the research we work in, we're still learning and evolving. In developing Pivot, we had no models or other leaders across the nation to follow. And we just took the first step and continued taking steps and started moving forward and adjusting as needed. And that's what you can do in your journey. It's what I find myself doing in mine oftentimes. So who are patient research advocacy? They are us. They're the survivors, the co-survivors, that's the family and friend caregivers, the previvors, those diagnosed at high risk of cancer. And while excuse me, and we're committed to self-development and education to gain a basic understanding of research and the science of behind its treatments. We share patient experiences, perspectives, and insights that can only be gained by living 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with cancer. We are involved with the greater community of survivors and co-survivors, so we can learn from them and share a collective patient perspective in our research advocacy work. In summary, research advocates, some of us may, or not me, but some research advocates may be trained in science, but many are not. And while a basic understanding of science and research process is helpful, our job is to provide a non-scientific collective patient perspective. So that is that we share a patient perspective, which is our own personal experience with cancer, and then the collective patient perspective that we get in our knowledge about others' experiences and our networks with them. And that's what we strive to share with our research friends and colleagues. Why should patient advocates be involved in research's decision making? Well, we ensure that patients are the focus of the research and the research aims are relevant to patients. They're meaningful to patients. We add a live human face and sense of urgency to the research discussions and decisions. We also provide real-life, diverse, We also provide real-life, diverse, insightful expertise which impacts the decisions being made, and we also spur innovation. We're not bound by what we know scientifically because that's not our expertise. We actually think outside the scientific box, which can actually be helpful in some of the discussions that we've had, and I've seen this happen more often than not. So how do we contribute to research? Well, we can help hone the research questions so it more effectively focuses on what's important to patients and community. We can help develop community and patient-focused public summaries, outreach, recruitment, and retention strategies, inform consents and processes and the results of the research summaries, and sharing of those results with the public and the community. We can also raise awareness and support for research, including basic science, and we can help develop and implement mutually engaging educational tools and strategies for patients, communities, and researchers working together. All you need to get started on your patient research advocacy journey are, besides being a cancer survivor, co-survivor, or previvor, is a desire to make things better for patients, communication skills, the ability to represent all patients, not just your story, and a drive for knowledge. In other words, a willingness to learn more about the science, the cancer, and the treatment, and to be curious and ask questions. That's part of our best job, is being able to ask questions. What we sometimes think are stupid questions, but they really aren't. I've found myself asking questions that promote researchers to start thinking, and I've seen this happen in many of our discussions with our rapid reactor panel, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So our ability to work collaboratively with others, and for me, a sense of humor has always seemed to be a good addition. KU Cancer Center is at the forefront of engaging patients in their research decision-making process. Roy is humble, but Pivot doesn't exist anywhere else in America. There are cancer centers that have advisory boards, or cancer centers that have advisory boards in breast cancer or whatever, but no one has a comprehensive, inclusive resource like Pivot. But with the strong, visible support of our leadership, this patient-led initiative is evolving into a powerful force for researchers and patient advocates. Pivot, or Patient Investigators Working Together, it was launched in 2016. We have, and it has grown into an invaluable resource, as Dr. Jensen mentioned, for the Cancer Center, and an energizing resource for those surviving and co-surviving cancer. Today, we have 116 Pivot members from across our service area who are available to work with researchers. We come from a variety of experiences with many different cancer types, and we are diverse in race, ethnicity, age, gender, urban, rural residents, experience with healthcare and education. And to step back for just a moment to a question that was asked to Dr. Jensen, when we first started the idea of having a group like Pivot, we didn't have the name. We had a patient partner development team who worked with us to lead and direct what we call it, the organization and everything. In appointing and selecting that team, we were very intentional about not having it be just who happens to walk in the door or who happens to be known. Otherwise, if we would have done that, no offense to my fellow white older breast cancer survivors, we would have had mostly white older breast cancer survivors participating. But we were very intentional and weighted and persistent in finding a broad cross-section. So we are diverse in race, ethnicity, age, gender, urban, rural residents, experience with healthcare and education. We are trained and coached to work with researchers, and as of September, we have engaged with over 65 KU Cancer Center researchers and supported 35 research proposals requesting funding from government and other organizations. The Pivot program was created by patients, for patients, and continues to be patient-led. It is governed by our patient leader team, that's 12 research advocates. We have 2 working groups, they're education and then communication and member engagement, that actually design and create our programs for Pivot. And as far as staff, I'm the lead patient research advocate. The lead researcher is Jill Hamilton-Reeves, which you'll be hearing from during these next few days, and program manager Sarah Douglas, who you've already heard from, as well as Hope Gribble, who you've already heard from. And she's the executive director of the Masonic Cancer Alliance, but she actually is our conduit with Cancer Center leadership and is our leadership support in this program. But also a big, huge thank you goes to Roy Jensen and his executive team. Pivot would not exist today or have nearly the success that we've been able to enjoy if it were not for their strong, visible support and funding of Pivot. Pivot has many resources to assist you in your patient research advocacy journey, like training and orientation, like the one you're attending tonight and in the next 2 days. We cover such topics as listed below. And then we also have our knowledge and skills webinars that are hosted quarterly. We have more resources to assist you in working with researchers and learning more about research, cancer, and the emerging treatments that are going on in cancer. Plus, to give you an opportunity to dip your toes into the water of being a patient research advocate, you can sign up to participate in one of our Rapid Reactor teams. Created in 2018, Pivot's Rapid Reactor team is sort of our version of the famous TV show called Shark Tank. RRT connects researchers with advocates for 60-minute online, interactive, and I would say intensive discussions about their research. Researchers gain immediate and relevant input from patient research advocates about their project. And all it takes to start it is a researcher requesting a RRT review. Then, using a structured template, the researcher gives about a 10-minute presentation about their research, plus any questions or requests that they would have of us. Then, in a facilitated 50-minute discussion, advocates ask questions, share suggestions and comments, and have a great discussion with the researcher. As of September, 31 researchers have presented to the Rapid Reactor team, where they've gained patient expertise and insights that has enhanced their research. And the researchers have ranged, did my earbuds go out?
Nope, you're good. You sound good.
Well, it did, like it was going out. As a 30 have gained expertise and insights to enhance their research. The researchers have ranged from basic science to translational clinical science to population health. And the evaluations from those sessions have shown that 88% of the researchers felt they got feedback on the feasibility of their project. 70% felt the experience increased their understanding of the patient voice and what patients can bring to the research table. 70% felt it increased their sensitivity to patients. 50% received ideas on how to inform patients and communities about their research, and 44% got ideas on how to use the results to benefit patients and communities. Last year, during our Cancer Center annual research symposium, we hosted a pivot day. Since seeing is believing, we decided to use the time to spotlight our Rapid Reactor team. Pivot members invited 6 KU researchers to present in live online Rapid Reactor team sessions. Research registrants then were invited to observe, and at the conclusion, those who were on the Rapid Reactor team chose the researcher team that was the winner of the Pivot Patient Engagement Travel Awards, which allowed them to travel to a research symposium or conference or training of their choosing. The sessions received tons of positive feedback from KU Cancer Center members attending the symposium, and here's just one of them. The Pivot Rapid Reactor team was excellent. Pivot made an incredible debut, opening opportunities for researchers to get more involved with patient advocates. In conclusion, our vision, as created by Pivot's founding patient partner development team, is patients, families, caregivers, and researchers accelerating innovative approaches to redefine cancer research together. And tonight, it's about you and your journey into patient research advocacy. As a reminder, our goal in Pivot is to help make your experience and journey as exciting and inspiring as you want it to be. And you can choose to be involved as much as you want. And it's whatever you feel you have the time, interest, passion, and commitment for. So, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Cheryl. Trish, do we have any questions in the chat?
There was a question about the definition of previvor, but it kind of got answered, but someone might want to talk a little more about it.
Okay, Cheryl, would you elaborate on what it means to be a previvor?
A previvor is someone who's been diagnosed at high risk. So generally, there's someone who has a genetic predisposition like BRCA1 or BRCA2. It's a gene that can morph into breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer, and now we're finding some other cancers as well. But anyway, if you have a gene that predisposes you to cancer, you could be diagnosed as being at high risk. And Dr. Jensen, if he's still on, may want to expand on that further.
Well, I mean, that's certainly true. And, you know, it's a concept that I think emphasizes the idea that patients at high risk for cancer need to be much more engaged with the health system to ensure that, you know, they get the best possible care and the earliest possible diagnosis for any cancers that might arise in their situation.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, any additional questions for Cheryl or Dr. Jensen or any of us regarding Pivot? You guys will definitely learn more throughout the week, and on Friday we'll teach you more about how you can get involved and kind of the different levels of engagement.